People who want to work at Vice are going to have money already, have support from their parents, and they're probably going to be left-leaning people from the city to begin with, in which case the messages espoused through these digital media companies are going to have a political slant and a class-based slant. Merry Christmas, everybody! I know many of you are probably sitting around with your friends and your family, opening presents, eating Christmas dinner, enjoying a nice holiday off from work, and many of you might just be alone and working like I am. But there is still news to talk about, so I always want to make sure I have something for you. And today I want to talk about the Vice Media sexism scandal and the backlash. Keep in mind, I used to work for Vice. I worked there for about a year and a half. I was the founding member of Vice News, so I saw a lot go on at Vice. But I can say a lot of what's described in these stories I didn't personally witness. But first, let's take a look at the latest news. Just a couple days ago, CBS News reported, Vice Media apologizes for perpetuating sexism in the media industry. The media company Vice has responded to a New York Times story about rampant sexual harassment by senior executives and employees, acknowledging that it has failed to create a safe and inclusive workplace where everyone, especially women, can feel respected and thrive. The Times reported that the company has settled at least 4 cases involving allegations of sexual harassment or defamation brought by former employees. One settlement totaled $135,000 and was paid to a former employee who claimed she was fired after she rejected an intimate relationship with Andrew Crichton, the company's current president. Vice has long been criticized as a boys' club. It's considered to be rough, kind of gross. They have a non-traditional workplace agreement that, yes, I actually signed. The gist of the non-traditional workplace agreement, as they explained it to me, was that at a media company like Vice, you're going to have to talk about things that are probably going to make the average person uncomfortable, and some people are going to be crass and crude, and that you're okay working in this environment. Many people have accused Vice of using this as an excuse to prevent people from reporting harassment, or that people felt like because of the agreement they couldn't report harassment. According to Business Insider, Vice had a non-traditional workplace agreement that made some employees feel they could not complain about sexual harassment. The agreement's been uploaded to the internet, and we have it here. Vice non-traditional workplace agreement to staff. Individuals employed by Vice must be conscious of Vice's non-traditional environment and comfortable with exposure to and participation in situations that may present themselves during the course of their employment. While working at Vice, I acknowledge that I may be exposed to highly provocative material, some of it containing extremely explicit sexual and controversial content. If I travel off-site for projects and perform work on location, I will be confronted with unique and unusual situations which may be considered offensive, indecent, or unacceptable by others. Over time, Vice has slowly become more and more corporate, and that's one of the criticisms a lot of people have for it, but there is a balance. Corporate protections versus freedom, I guess. With the freedom comes a lot of problems. When I worked at Vice, I never really witnessed anything like this. There were some rumors that things were happening, and some of the people that are in this New York Times story actually know. I made a really long video where I talk about the story on my second channel, so that's in the description below if you wanna go check that out. I recommend you subscribe. But this video is gonna go a little bit more in depth into the practices that people believe enabled this, and I want to talk about the creative industry and some of the criticisms Vice has. Now, Vice has denied that the non-traditional agreement was used to excuse bad conduct. According to the Times, Vice said the agreement was always meant to address content. It had nothing to do with conduct, and that the company stopped using the agreement when it realized employees were concerned about it. When I worked at Vice, I met gang leaders, revolutionaries. I actually got to meet a former Soviet general in Ukraine. There were a lot of situations that were really, really dangerous, and the idea of a non-traditional workplace agreement, it really does make sense. If you work at Vice, there's a lot that they cover that many companies don't want to go near or are scared of covering due to political correctness or other problems. Now, over time, Vice has been criticized for becoming more and more politically correct and pandering to a certain political party, and that sucks. And the more we hear about these problems, the more Vice is going to lose what once made it edgy. When Vice started, one of the appeals was that it was free. You could be cool, you could do whatever you wanted. They did really weird things and talked about really weird things, and a lot of people weren't even paid for it. According to a Vice article called "My Vice Internship Taught Me Everything I Need to Know About Having a Dick," they'd mentioned that I'd heard rumors about weird initiation rituals where interns are asked to drink jars full of bodily excretions. So naturally, I was a bit hesitant at first. I didn't experience anything like that, but there are rumors that at Vice there would be jars or bottles full of excrement and other weird bodily secretions, and that they would make interns do something with it. I don't know the full story, it's just rumors that I never personally experienced, but I was able to find at least this one story that briefly mentioned these rumors. One of the big criticisms of Vice is that they relied on unpaid interns in the past, and that many people who work there are still underpaid. I think over time they've gradually started paying people more competitively, and it does seem that Vice is sort of losing its wild, crazy behavior and becoming more of your traditional corporate media environment, and that includes competitive pay and HR departments. It seems like they still hold a bit of their past and are now dealing with the ramifications of that. But in March 10th, on Medium, Artist Representation posted, "Media is complicit, the definitive guide to enlightening information on Vice media, media illiteracy, unethical labor practices, corporate funders, and a loss of objectivity." Shane Smith, CEO of Vice, has referred to his media company in Williamsburg as a factory of trustafarians, which is reiterated in the 136 reviews of working for Vice, most of which say you need a trust fund to afford to work there. 9 out of 10 reviews say that the pay is terrible, the company is a revolving door with no room to grow, and you might have to get a side job at Starbucks to help make rent. Yet even with all this, everybody wanted to work at Vice, and they still do. I can't tell you how many times I get messages from people asking me how to get jobs at Vice. Even with all of this going on, people still want to work there because they just view Vice as being cool. Now, this criticism of Vice being a factory of trustafarians is a bit unfair because that's not unique to Vice, that's unique to media in general. One of the big problems with media in this country is that there are left-leaning elites who work there and dominate the culture there. Why? The average person who wants to get a job in these companies needs some kind of in. You need to know somebody. They're not going to hire someone they don't know and don't trust. Things have been changing a little bit, but you're going to deal with a couple problems. One, the people who work there are already liberal elites, meaning they were likely wealthy growing up. They're going to hold far left politics. If they interview you and they don't like you because you have different politics or because you don't relate to them, they're not going to hire you. Not only that, but often to get a job in these media companies, you have to work as an unpaid intern first. Now, albeit unpaid internships have disappeared over the past few years following a Supreme Court ruling, I believe in 2013, but you still need to be able to take a job that pays you very, very little to get started. And that means only people who can survive in a big city like New York on very little pay are going to be able to make it in this industry. And that excludes the majority of people who can't afford to go to college, can't afford to live in New York, and can't afford to take a very tiny salary to get started at a big media company. Keeping in mind, many media companies are losing money at the same time. So it's not entirely the fault of the business that they're offering low wages. This is just going to be the outcome. People who want to work at Vice are going to have money already, have support from their parents, and they're probably going to be left-leaning people from the city to begin with, in which case the messages espoused through these digital media companies are going to have a political slant and a class-based slant. The post shows how you've got Disney, Hearst, and News Corp all holding a stake in Vice. I'm not sure if they're trying to draw some kind of conspiracy here or make some kind of accusation, but Vice has taken a lot of investment from these companies, giving them a very large evaluation. The post is long, and I don't want to get into too much about it. But one thing it does bring up are that people don't get paid. And it tells people not to take jobs for exposure. Don't write an article because they're going to give you exposure. Don't work for free. Demand pay. And now I want to get into a little bit about my opinion first. I don't think Vice is as bad as everyone says it is. It has a lot of problems that it's dealt with in the past. But it was significantly more fun to work there than most places, and with that, you have to deal with some pretty bad stuff. It's unfortunate that Vice couldn't deal with these problems until the New York Times finally came out with a story about it. Because in my opinion, I think Vice knew about a lot of these situations. I mean, look, they paid the settlements, they knew it was happening, and they're only responding now to the PR backlash, which is normal for any company. But keep in mind, this is not unique to Vice. Media companies all deal with the exact same thing. Getting people to work for free, paying really poorly, and having issues of sexual harassment and misconduct. These are problems that persist throughout the industry and need to be dealt with as a whole, and to point the finger at Vice specifically is a bit unfair, but Vice should be responsible for their own mistakes. They should fess up to them, which they have. Good. It's unfortunate it took the New York Times coming out for them to finally do it. As for people working for free, this is just going to be a little side opinion and a bit of advice. Look, sometimes you do work for free. It's not about whether or not you're getting paid money. It's about whether or not you're getting value out of what you're putting in. If someone said that they would like me to produce a video for their YouTube channel and they didn't offer me any money, but I knew that it would result in a growth in followers, you're damn well sure I would take it. In fact, not too long ago, Sargon of Akkad asked me to produce a video for his channel while he was on vacation, and I did. I made a video explaining the inner workings of media at least a little bit, and that resulted in a significant bump in my followers on YouTube, which helps me earn revenue over the long haul. Right? The more viewers I have, the more ad revenue I can make, the more people who donate to me. So sometimes exposure work is good. The problem isn't that people are working for free. The problem is that people are working for a low value exchange. First of all, if a website like Vice or the Huffington Post or whoever asks you to write an article and they're not going to pay you, but it's seriously only going to be about 30 minutes of work, then yeah, sure, why not? You'll get a byline and you can say that you were syndicated or you've produced content for these platforms. If it's going to take you a substantially larger amount of time, like they want you to write several thousand words, well then yeah, you should probably consider that the value exchange isn't equal there. Often people assume that simply by writing an article for a platform, for a website, you're going to get new followers, it's going to work. But that's just not true. Because I've also hosted videos for the Discovery Network, now I believe it's called Now This, and some of these videos have millions of views and they resulted in no net gain for me at all. And I wasn't paid to do them. So it's a risk. I took a risk and said, I'd love to host something for this channel. Million views later, I gained only a few hundred subscribers. So it wasn't a total loss, but it probably wasn't an equal value exchange. This company getting over 1 million views is fantastic for them, and I didn't really get anything in return. So keep in mind, when you read all of these stories, there's a lot of politics involved. Naturally, people who don't like Vice are going to attack them and double down on all of this because they're attacking their tribal enemy. You need to look at everything as objectively and rationally as possible. How would you feel if someone pulled these moves on you? How would you feel if you made a mistake and someone called you out? You might disagree with Vice's response, you might disagree with how they handled these problems in the first place, or you might actually disagree with the people who are suing them. Whatever the reason, always try to empathize. The advice I give to people is try to view the world in 3 different ways. First, how do you feel about it? Make sure you actually think about how you feel about what's going on and how you feel about the world around you. 2, try to imagine you're watching this thing as an outside observer. Don't think about Vice as your enemy, don't think about them as your friend. Take the name Vice out of it and call it Corporation X. How would you feel about watching that happen? Remove yourself and your biases to the best of your ability. And lastly, you want to just think about how this fits into the bigger picture. Is Vice really the biggest problem here? No, the problem is actually cultural. It's bigger than Vice. And this has to do with Vice's politics, it has to do with pandering to social justice activists, it has to do with a sordid past and sexual harassment. But is it really Vice or is it something bigger? How does Vice fit into the world? This is how I approach things, and I believe this advice will help you kind of objectively see what's happening and actually come to solutions, actually find a way we can make the world a better place. So, thanks for hanging out. Seriously, there's so much more that I could talk about as it pertains to Vice and the creative industry, but it is Christmas, and I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so this video is probably going to get cut down, but you're not going to notice any of that because you don't see how long the video is when I edit it. But I just want to end this video by saying Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody, Happy Hanukkah. Whatever it is that you celebrate, have a happy holiday and a happy new year. Thank you all so much for supporting me throughout the year. Everybody who's donated, your contribution helps me do the work that I do. So here's what I want you to do in the comments below. 1, yes, let's talk about Vice. Let's talk about how you feel about the backlash and the scandal so we can keep the conversation going. But also, let me know what you think about 2018. Do you have any predictions? Are there any big stories that are coming up? The holidays are always slow. Winter is always slow. But as the Northern Hemisphere starts to warm, things start to happen. What do you think is going to happen next? Comment below, and I'll be looking for your story ideas and suggestions. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to support me, go to timcast.com/donate. Give whatever you'd like or give nothing at all. My videos are always free and available every day at 4 p.m. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter @timcast. Make sure you go to my second channel in the description below and subscribe there because I'll have more personal commentary and it is a backup channel if anything goes wrong here. So again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.